Hello friends, welcome to week 3 of our Duffle sew along. And this week, it's our final week of sewing. We will be attaching handles, doing bindings, and assembling the bag. So I'm going to share as many tips as I can in our little 30-minute, hopefully we'll keep it to about 30 minutes, video, but I've got a lot of good things I hope to share with you today about the handles and the assembly and the bindings for our duffel bags. So first I wanted to show you that you can fix things when they go wrong. So I am making my duffel bag fabric. I have it in kind of different sections to show you my assembly. So I'm making my duffel bag out of this really cute cheetah fabric, and as you saw if you watched last week's, I cut my pieces in half so that I could seam them together and put them on my long arm and get them quilted. But it's been a very busy week here. We're getting ready to vend at QuiltCon, so if you're coming to QuiltCon, you'll have to come visit us. And my employees have been so wonderful helping me out, and I handed the fabric to my employee as I was running errands and said, quilt this. So when I was going to make the bag, I realized that I hadn't seamed together the two fabrics to make one big piece for my bag body so that my fabric was directional on both sides, right? I didn't want cheetahs going the wrong direction when you make the bag, right? So So when I was cutting it out, I was like, oh no, I have two big rectangles. How am I going to remedy this? But thankfully, I've figured out ways to remedy this before, but I just thought it might be helpful to show you. So if you end up quilting a bunch of fabric and it's directional and then you decide to make a duffel bag, you're like, oh darn, can I use that? Well, you can, because I made it work. So I just wanted to show you what I did. So I ended up creating a little facing right here. It was a 2-inch strip, and I just ironed the fabric into it, into the center, and then I sewed it to each side. So I kept the pieces of soft and stable butt up right next to each other, and I pinned it, right, so that they didn't move. So I put the lining facing on first, and then what I did was added a piece of webbing across this way. So the stitching from the inside facing was underneath this, and then I stitched this here, so I was able to connect the pieces. So I'm gonna see if I can show you how, I don't know if you can see that those pieces are connected right here, seamed. Anyways, so I just wanted to show you that there's ways out of most mistakes. So, and it was totally my bad because I just gave it to her and said, quilt this. She didn't know that I was supposed to seam those before quilting. But anyways, so I wanted to just start with that. So, okay, so we're doing handles this week. So hopefully if you are covering your handles, you made your covered handles. And if not, hopefully you cut your handles. And we shared this little tip last week about using a lighter to finish the edges of your decorative webbing, so you can do that as well. I wanted to show on camera how to do the carrying strap hardware. I've shared this before, but I know that people have a question about this, so I thought it would be great to show it on camera. So I had one end, and I threaded it through my strap adjuster up and over and folded it back on itself, and then I sewed a little 1.5-inch rectangle with an X in it. And then with that seam on the top, this loose end, I'm going to thread my strap adjuster or my swivel hook with this on the right side. If you have covered webbing, your seam will be on opposite side of this, right? I don't know if I'm saying that clear. I hope that is. So I have this now looped here, and you can see my seam was here, so those meet so that it kind of covers that seam so that you have a nice finish on this side. And so we're just going to fold that. There's our first swivel hooks attached, and that's done, so that's easy. So then we're going to bring this raw edge and we're going to come back and we're going to go up and over that strap adjuster again. So now we have a slider that works, a working slider, strap adjuster. Alright, and so then on this end, we're just going to mark the measurement as listed in the pattern. I honestly don't remember what it is, and then I'm going to thread that on, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to sew that down. And then our strap is finished. It's like funny. Yep, there you go. So there is threading that live. That will be pretty easy to do. So this can be just set aside now because your carrying strap is finished. Oh, did I leave my... I did. I left my little hardware tabs on the sewing table, but you'll sew those in later, but you'll follow the directions in the pattern to do that. Okay, for bindings. Okay, so we have our end panels and our pocket bindings. So the email that's going out, I have lots of tips listed, but I like using my stiletto and wonder clips and a glue tip or anything like that to hold your binding right in place when you're just sewing these bindings, and also your the top zipper binding as well. So be sure to use all of your favorite tools for that. And then you'll round these corners with the circle template provided in the pattern, or if you have these Creative Grid circle rulers, these are awesome. You can use these and you lay them down and you can just rotary cut right around them. I love these set, and if you signed up for the newsletter, you got this little free pattern for this zip bag. This is my favorite little zip bag to carry my circle rulers in. So you can also use the bottom cone of, or like the bottom circle of a cone of thread. That's usually the right size to trim that as well. So you can measure it on your template in your pattern to do that. Okay, so I'm going to, I wrote down my steps because I want to make sure that I remember everything to show you. Bindings. Okay, so if you are like me and you like to add labels to your project, this is a really great time to add a label when you're binding before you attach your pocket, but when you're binding your little pocket binding. So I have these little cases that I love that carry all my labels, and then I can just pick which one I want to add in there. And since I'm planning on donating this duffel for the duffel drive for foster care, I decided to add one that says made with love so that they know, whoever ends up with this knows that it was made with love. So those labels are also in my shop. Okay, bias binding. So there's instructions to make the bias binding in the pattern, but I just wanted to talk about bias binding a little bit because some people are like, why do you have to have bias binding if you're not familiar? And I understand, because I always wondered the same thing as well. So bias binding is used when you go around curves, and it just lays so much nicer because it's cut on the bias, right? The stretch. So you can see that it's like really stretchy when you pull it on that grain. So I recommend pinning your binding in half every like 4 to 6 inches like this, because you don't want it to twist. So I kind of want to see if I can show you what it looks like. If you fold this in half and it's not even, you can kind of see, I'm just lining these up off. You can kind of see how it like ripples like this. To avoid getting that rippling on your binding, you want to just fold it directly in half. I prefer not to iron my bias binding in half. Mostly because then I feel like it just rolls over a little bit easier, so that if there's a crease, I feel like sometimes it won't roll naturally, right? So that's why I choose not to iron my bias binding in half, because ironing it would probably fix that rippling, but that's why I pin it, because then I can just pin it right in half and you can kind of see that you can see that it's like, okay, it's like laying flat and there's no ripples. So and then I wanted to share about so in the first version of my pattern, so we haven't really talked about in this lives, but I have a second edition version of this pattern, and what updated was the carrying strap. The carrying strap originally wasn't included in the first pattern. And then I also updated the binding instructions because I really like this method of doing the bias binding. So if you have the first version, there is a video on YouTube of how I bound it when I first originally designed it, and that works really great. But this way also works great. I don't have a video yet of this, but I'm hoping to make one while I'm binding this bag to share with you all. So the reason I like this method is because the bias is attached to this just small end panel. It's flat, it's small, and then in the first version it's attached to the whole bag. Like you put your end panels in and then you attach the bias binding, so you're dealing with like the whole bag. So I just find it to be a little bit easier to attach it to this small part first. So I wanted to share some tips about sewing this on. So I like to join my ends on the longest straight edge of whatever shape or whatever piece I'm sewing binding onto. That goes for like a quilt or a wall hanging or whatever. Usually it's bags that I'm binding, but and so I started sewing just like right about here where this clip is, and then I sewed this down, and then I ended sewing right here on the edge. So, of course I forgot my pins too. But I wanted to show how I like to mark these to cut to join the ends. So, oh, I have pins here, great. So I like to pull this binding a little bit tight. So I'm going to just move that clip over and pull this binding tight. Not like too tight, just a little bit, just to keep it flat and tight. And then, I hope you guys can see this, I'm going to overlap this other binding and make it even as well. And I'm going to just clip that in place also. So, this, I guess I'll show you this first. The anatomy of the bias binding that we're trying to join. Okay, so we're going to call this one binding and this another binding. And each binding has a top and a bottom, right? Because there's two layers, like a top layer and a bottom layer. So top layer and a bottom layer, top layer and a bottom layer, and they're going to be like this. So what you want is your top layers go together and your bottom layers go together, right? Of this binding and this binding. So now that I've shared that, I'm going to clip these again and show you. Okay, clip. And then we also have here, I'll show you this too. We also have this cut on the bias. So there's this point right here and this point here. So the point right here on this edge and the point right here on this edge. And what we are trying to do is marking this exact point and this exact point on this binding on this side, right? So I'm going to line these up, and so this is my bottom binding, this is my top binding, and then I also have tops and bottoms that correspond with each other. So I'm going to mark in my top binding those points, those exact points that I just shared, that top point and the angled point of the binding. So there's this right here. I'm pulling it out. You can see that, but I'm going to tuck it back in and show you. So that's the top one. So it's going to correspond with the top one here. And I want to just mark a pin exactly where that fabric point meets. And then I'm going to mark a pin exactly where this other one meets as well on the bottom one. Okay. And I know that was difficult to see, but I'm going to show you as I open this up. So I pulled my clip off, and if you can see, I'm going to open this like this. So I know this angle is what I'm trying to match. And if I open this and I marked my pins, you can see as well that that angle is correct, because this point and this point and this point and this point, like that, right? Okay. So then I need to add my seam allowance into this, because this is exactly where the fabric meets. So we have to add our seam allowance, right? And we can't make this side grow So I have to add my seam allowance twice on this side, 1/4 and 1/4. So I'm going to add a 1/2 inch here. So what I like to do when I'm just sitting at my sewing machine is just take my little teeny Creative Grids ruler, and I like this one because it has like a 1/2 inch mark on it, and my Sew Line air erasing marker, and I'm going to just mark a 1/2 inch, and I'll show you once I do it so you can kind of see. So now you can see I've marked that line, and it's a 1/2 inch away from each of those pins. So now I'm just going to cut on the line. Be sure to not cut through your pins and dull your scissors, or if you take it to your rotary mat. So now I have these 2 ends, and they're exactly the size I need to just sew this binding together and then sew it down and finish and complete the binding. So what I like to do is leave those pins right in there and then take them and go right sides together and then pin this right away so that it's ready for me to sew at my sewing machine. And then I can just, if you need to, you can fold this, right? That's one of the reasons why I love Soft and Stable, because I can just like fold it or even clip it like this, clip it with your Wonder Clip, and then you can take it to your sewing machine and just sew that, and then it will lay flat and you can just sew it down. So there's my bias binding tip. I don't know that I've ever shared that in a sew along, but I was trying to think of something new that would be beneficial, and I think that that will be helpful. So I hope you enjoyed that, learning that method. There are lots of methods to join bindings, but that is one that I really like, especially when when the fabric is already cut on the bias like that. Okay, so I have my end panels finished, my bindings are on, and now my handles. I sewed my handles on, so I wanted to talk about if you're using a decorative fabric or a decorative webbing, I just burned the edge of these and then butted them right next to each other. You can also fold a 1/2 inch under if you want it to be a little bit more finished. I have a photo of that that's going out in the newsletter, so get on the newsletter list and you'll get a photo of that as well. But you can just fold them under, butt them up next to each other, and then just top stitch them down. If you're doing fabric covered webbing, let's see, I'll show you on the bottom of this back. I just butt them the finished edge right next to each other as well, and you just top stitch them down. So okay, and then after that we'll work on our zipper, attaching the zipper. So I've attached the zipper on one side already. You can see that I've just sewn it right along the binding, so I wanted to show you this as well. And I don't know that it's going to be that visible, but I'll explain what I'm doing as well. So I've got my By Annie double-sided basting tape. This is, like I told you, this is my new favorite stuff. So I'm just going to rip off of a piece. It's double-sided, so it comes with a paper on one side, and then it's sticky, and then you peel the paper off. So what I like to do is stick this right onto my binding. So I'm going to attach this like right onto the binding, the inside of my binding here. And then I'm just going to rip it. It's super easy to just rip. My roll fell off the table, so got a big piece ready. Okay, so I'm just going to stick this down onto the binding. Let's see, okay. Try not to let it unroll because that's not very helpful. Oh, but it rolls right back up. There you go. Okay, so I have that stuck down, you see, right onto the binding, right here. And I'm just going to peel the paper off and keep that sticky part down so that you just peel that right off. It's so slick. And then I think the most important part when doing the zipper is keeping these edges aligned. You want to keep, like when you're lining this up, you've got one sewn on, you want to keep these edges here aligned. So I'm just going to stick this right on. And the thing that I really like about the basting tape is it is pretty like easy to reposition it if you need to. And then I just stick this about 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper teeth on the zipper tape. And then I can just take this right to my sewing machine, which is so nice. So the second side is probably trickier to sew on than the first. Let's see, I want to get that a little bit closer. Because you can't take a loop like this to your sewing machine, so you are going to have to unzip this. But I like to keep the zipper closed so I can get those edges aligned first. And then you can unzip this, and then you can take this to your sewing machine. And what I like to do is just fold this out of the way, like this, and then I can take it to my sewing machine and sew this on. Okay, so there's our zipper tip. If you don't have basting tape, I just use pins usually. I just use pins to pin it in place. And it works fine either way. I just really like not stabbing myself with a pin. And so the basting tape has been a great alternative to that. Okay, I think that is most of the tips I prepared to share with you. So once you get your bag to this point and the zipper's in, you're going to attach your hardware tabs, which I left on my cutting table, so I apologize I don't have them to show you. But when you're sewing these hardware tabs in, I feel like it's really important to do reinforcement stitches, because you're going to be having a lot of weight if you carry that on your shoulder. So I always double or triple stitch the hardware tab onto the bag at this point, and then also when I'm attaching the bindings, I just like to double stitch there as well. And then one of the reasons why I really like attaching the binding here, because your bag will be then flipped right side out, so the right sides are together, inside out. Your bag's going to be inside out when you're doing this. But because I've already sewn this on, when I've got my end panel clipped in, then I have a stitching line to follow when I'm sewing it onto my bag. And I feel like that really helps me keep my seam allowance right on track, so that I don't like overstitch or understitch, because this is the thickest part of the bag, and so I want my binding to be able to wrap around it nicely. But if you get too much like bulk into your corners, feel free to trim out a little bit if your binding isn't like wrapping all the way around. It's okay to trim out your seams. I think they call it like grading your seams or easing your seams. So you can totally trim out any bulk if it's too bulky to get your binding all the way around. Just take your scissors and trim them up a little bit. And then you'll flip this over and do top stitching. I know a lot of people do hand binding because they get scared to sew through all the thickness. Maybe it's not that they get scared. Maybe it's that they prefer the look of hand binding, or maybe it's that they feel like their machine's not going to handle it. And that is an option. I don't hand bind almost anything except my quilts. On bags, I like to just machine bind. So be sure you're using your Top Stitch 9014 needle. This is a great time when you're attaching the whole bag together to be using that heavier duty needle. And just go slowly. Go slowly. Another trick that I have seen is, if you are ready to like clip it all together, use Wonder Clips. It's called a clip trick. I learned it in one of Bianni's Facebook pages. But people just will clip all the pieces together and use the clips, and it just kind of compresses the soft and stable, so that when you go to sew it, it's like a little bit thinner, a little bit flatter, right? So that's a trick that's great as well. Your Wonder Clips are going to be really handy at this point, because pinning through all the layers will just bend your pins. So use your clips. Okay, I think that's all I've prepared to share. But as always, you can email me if you have questions, DM me. I'd love to share things that are helpful for you, so I hope that some of those things were really helpful for you. And then I'm going to see if Laurel's here. Laurel's going to hop on for just a few minutes. So Laurel, if you can send me a request to join the live, that would be great. Laurel is the one hosting this sew along with me. She's the one that gave me the idea to do the Duffle drive. So we just wanted to take a few minutes at the end of this live today to talk about, okay, let's see, oh no, to talk about the Duffle drive that we're doing in conjunction with our sew along. So are you there, Laurel? Let's see, I wonder if I can request her. I don't know. Let's see. Laurel, are you there? Do you want to request to join? I'm going to just go here real quick. I'm going to just grab my phone And I'm going to make sure I haven't missed any questions. But I also don't want to miss Laurel's request. So, okay, there you are, Laurel. Do you want to request to join the live? That would be great. Okay, I don't think I've missed any questions. So let's see. Can you find the request, Laurel? I don't know. Maybe you have, and maybe I'm missing it. Oh, there it is. Live Instagram. Oh, yay!
Like I promised I
Finally!
requested.
Goodness, I'm sorry. I didn't realize
No,
that there was a notification at the bottom. I was thought it was coming through the other one. So, welcome, Laurel.
Okay. Great tips. I'm sitting here sewing my bag right now, and yeah, another thing I would add to when you're binding is sometimes I will zigzag stitch around the whole edge, and that just compresses things a little bit further. So if you're struggling to get your binding around, maybe try zigzagging and just flatten everything.
That is
a little bit more.
Really great tip.
So,
that's a really great tip. I've actually heard people serging the edge too, so that would probably be a similar thing as well. If you have a
serger, by all means,
I love
that out.
hearing everybody's tips because there's so many ways of doing this. So, do you have your fabric there? You can show us what you're making your bag out of.
It's kind of like, well, I'm working on a duffel and a tote. Here, let me clip my threads here.
If you don't, it's okay, but I'm excited for everybody to see your bag. Oh no, did it freeze up? Okay, I think that so. Hopefully Laurel will join us again. I dropped out somehow. Okay, let me see if I can invite you again. I figured out how to do it. So I just invited you again, Laurel. The only problem with serging is that you don't want to cut off too much of the fabric. That's true. Absolutely. You probably wouldn't want to cut off anything. You just want the serge stitch to be around. So let's see. Okay, there's Laurel again. So let's see if she can pop back on. Okay, I've accepted you. Hopefully it will work. Okay, accept again. I hope that Laurel will be able to join us again because she was going to share with us a little bit about what she's found out about the duffel drive. Okay. I don't know why it's not. Let's see if I can just invite you. Oh, it says unable to join. All right. Well, I'll just share a little bit. Laurel has been still working on the resources and lists, and so we're really excited to be able to share what we have found out about the Duffle Sew Along and all of the places to donate in the email next week. We're still compiling a list, so if you found out of places in your area that would be willing to accept duffels, that could use them for foster care or women's shelters or anything like that, we would love your resources. So send me a DM or send Laurel a DM, and we're compiling that list along with the stuff that we've been finding out as well. Yeah, and it looks like it's not working. I'm so sad. Oh, yay!
Oh, I don't know how, I don't know what happened, but here we are. Okay. So as Kate was saying, we've been working on places to donate, and I finally got some great information from Carmen Hall at Utah Foster Care. She's located in Orem, which is pretty close to where Kate and I both live. She said that in Utah, DCFS is the parent company of Utah Foster Care. because I had called DCFS and they were like, we can't really take anything, and I thought that was strange. So she is willing to take anything that we have here in Utah. She said she has caseworkers call her all the time looking for exactly what we're providing, duffels and suitcases. And so she said there are 1,700 kids in care in Utah right now,
Oh my goodness.
which is wild. I don't
A
know
lot,
why we got
yeah.
a thumbs down, but that was weird. Um, so she is happy to take what we have. I'm still working on compiling a list of what anyone has suggested in their area about places to donate. So I will be making all of that available. I am still calling around to other states trying to find better information for all of you in kind of major metro areas. But if you can do any of the legwork to find a place that's local to you, the better. If you simply cannot find someplace local to you, we will take them at QuiltCon. Caitlin is vending, and I'll be there too.
Yep.
And so you can bring your bags
You can drop them
to
off
Caitlin's
right in the booth,
Yes.
and we'll and we'll collect them each day, and then our lovely friend Raquel, who lives in the Phoenix area, is going to gather them for Phoenix area as well.
Yeah. So Raquel, if you don't know Raquel, she is darling. She's going to take them. Anything that we collect at QuiltCon will be donated locally there in the Phoenix area. And also, if you, just as a last ditch effort, if you simply cannot find a place local to you, you can send them to us, and we will donate them to Utah Foster Care here in Utah. But again, this was dreamed up to help you bless your local communities and to strengthen your own community where you live, and help you to find the places around you that need help that you can provide. So again, if the fires in California or another issue that's close to you is tugging at your heart, by all means, donate in a way that makes you feel good and makes you feel like you've blessed someone else. Otherwise, we would love to have you donate to foster care. And that's all I have today.
Yeah.
So compiling the list. So if you have places that you like to donate, just DM them to me or to Kate, and we'll keep that going.
Perfect.
So
awesome.
Thanks. Sorry
Thank you.
for the
I'm so
technical
glad you finally got back on. I'm glad it worked out for you.
I don't know what happened, but
I don't know. It's probably the internet connection or something. But
I guess I don't know. But
anyway, okay. Thanks everybody for joining us for our final week. We will do a quick live, quick next Friday, to just wrap up everything. And so post your bags to the hashtag Duffle Soul on 2025. And if you're donating, use the hashtag DuffleDrive25. We'd love to see what you guys are making. So have a really great weekend. And you have a great weekend too, Laurel.
Oh, and you. We'll
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.